Welcome to Describing the Skybox, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Rutherford.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Fez, a game that was developed by Polytron Corporation, published by Trapdoor, and released in 2012 on Xbox 360, Windows, Linux, OS X, PS3, PS4, PlayStation Vita, iOS, and the Switch.
But first, you can give us a like or a rating, subscribe to us on Blue Sky. It'd be greatly appreciated. Chad, can you describe Fez?
Fez is a puzzle platformer that was a sort of indie darling, I think, as a result of Indie Game the movie, I think, a lot, as that kind of took off. I think it came out the year after this game released and spotlighted it. Was it Braid and Super Meat Boy, or was it?
Yeah.
It was Braid. Yeah. Okay. And so I think it kind of, it caught a lot of recognition from that. And then a lot of people cared a lot about what Phil Fish was like. And then that died off pretty quickly, which was probably good for the industry.
Right.
To care less about Phil Fish.
Yeah, apparently it's like a whole, like, pretty long story. I watched an hour-long YouTube video about him earlier today, just in case. Yeah. I mean, he does seem like he kind of just sucks, but also it seems like internet fame just kind of messed with his head.
Yeah, I think, well, there's also kind of so I like was aware of this stuff as it was going on and have not returned to it. So there's definitely some bias in terms of like when it came up and like who was involved and all that. And so my recollection of it was that, yeah, it reflected kind of badly on Phil Fish. But I also think that it was like a pretty small scale issue in the grand scheme of things, and that it was mostly just, well, I don't know. It if I remember correctly, there was some money involved that he did not use in the most appropriate way. So I guess that does suck, but. I'm happy to make this an episode about Fez the game as it is, and not about Phil Fish.
Yeah, just get that out of the way.
Yeah. Phil Fish, notable game designer who a lot of people think sucks ass.
Yep. And now, welcome our special guest to the podcast, Phil Fish.
Phil Fish, hey! But yeah, so Fez, though, the game that we're talking about, is a puzzle platformer, and it's funny, I'm glad, honestly, that there's a little bit of controversy surrounding the game, because it means that there's like an amount of negativity that I'm allowed to have that does not inherently reflect poorly on me. But I do want to say, I want to preface a lot of what I'm about to talk about in this episode with, I had a birthday recently. I'm now canonically 20 and also no longer in my early 30s, but solidly in my mid 30s.
Right.
Meaning, and it's maybe that and a reflection sort of on what aging means and does to us is what made me have this thought. But Fez is the kind of game that makes me think that I have lost a sense of childhood wonder and have gained I don't know. I'm not as whimsical as I was. I'm not as impressionable by cryptic video game bullshit. So I will say my experience with this game this time playing it was much more negative than I thought that it would be. And I think a lot of it just has to do with like, I don't have time for what Fez wants me to dedicate to it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I was going to say, I think it's the amount of free time you have. Because I was thinking similar things. Like, yeah, like I was like, I put this one up with all the other games that I've said this about, but I think it's bad for our format.
I was going, if you didn't say it, I was going to say I'll save you 6 seconds of the supercut by saying that this might be bad for our format.
Yeah, because like I was enjoying the game, and I knew there was like some cryptic stuff in it that I just wasn't figuring out or noticing, and I was like, I super just want to finish this and not.
No, that's fair.
I was like, I'm just not gonna get that into this one. But I don't think that's the game's fault at all. Yeah, I think it's just we don't have that much free time anymore.
Well, I think I'm going to push back and say, yes, it is the game's fault. It is. It is not me that is wrong. I think it's probably a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B in this case. Specifically, I think that this game does have a lot of that stuff, and I think a lot of that stuff that would be novel. Well, when was this? 2012, so 14 years ago. There's a lot of novelty to the things that this game packed into it, because it's obviously a game that has kind of. Fez is a platformer, and as a platformer, it has kind of a simple set of mechanics. You jump 2 platforms, but it also has like the most complicated level design of any game in history because of the rotating mechanic. So it's not actually that simple. It is more complicated. It feels simple to the player, but when you think about actually designing a level in Fez, it's a lot more annoying. And I know you can see like things being copied and pasted in ways that make that because they just work in the format. Like there are so many areas that are just like things arranged in kind of a square so that when you rotate it, one platform gets closer and another one gets farther away from a central structure. That's like 70% of the rooms in this game do that. But even with those shortcuts taken, I think that it's kind of a complicated game. And I think that is why it feels so impenetrable to actually like engage with the cryptic stuff, is because there's now this obstructing layer of complicated puzzle platforming that you have to do in order to explore or try new things. It's really hard to spend time solving the game's mysteries because the game part of the game just like impairs you from being able to do that constantly. And the I'll complain about it later, but the fast travel system does not help it at all.
Yeah, I think, I didn't click with it either, but like I feel like it's supposed to be like that. I think it's kind of like Tunic, where I think the game is kind of designed to be played and beaten or finished without the player noticing any of that stuff. But like it's there for the people who are really into it. So like if you really like the game and you're like the kind of person who is going to want to keep playing it and to like look at it closer, that stuff's in there for them. Like you have that moment where you start to notice the things, and then the game kind of becomes something else.
Well, see, and now we're drawing the line of what I consider to be cryptic bullshit and you not. I'm realizing, because I would not say that you were able to finish the game without engaging in at least some like secret finding, or I guess if you don't. So full disclosure, and maybe you could have told by this point, I didn't finish the game. I got 27 cubes. I did not make it through the 32 cube door. Oops. Oh no. And I think a lot of that was because there were things that I don't know. This is now it can reflect badly on me. I'm allowing that at this point. I would get to a point and I would say, like, I went through the 16 cube door And I was like, now you need 32 cubes. And I was like, oh, I could have seen that coming. But I thought that it was going to take me into like another set of levels similar to the first part. But it actually doesn't. You just have to go and be way more thorough in the areas that you've already been. And at that point, I was like, I've seen all of the major areas and done like the things, and now they want me to like go through and with a fine-tooth comb in order to get up to 32. And I spent like another like 2 to 3 hours going back through levels that I was already done with to get those cubes, and still didn't get it, and there were still more things to be found, and I just kind of called it because I had stopped having fun like 3 hours prior to that.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest problems with the game personally, is I think navigation is really difficult. The map isn't super helpful. And I mean, it clues you into the fact that there's more levels branching off of ones that you've been to. But yeah, it is very difficult to find that or at least I hit points multiple times where I'm like, I have no idea where to go now. So yeah, like that was the biggest friction point for me. But apparently I got through the 32 cube door, which is I think about halfway. There's 64 cubes that you need to get to finish it. But supposedly a review that I saw said you can get all 64 without having to engage with any of the secret stuff, like without having to get any anti-cubes or anything. So supposedly it's possible. But, you know, it seems like it would be difficult.
I was under the impression that it was like through the 32 cube door was like a final level and then the end. So I read that wrong apparently.
Yep, that's only halfway.
Fascinating. Which is interesting because I think that my save file percentage was higher, but I don't know.
The save file percentage goes up to 209%.
Cool. Well, yeah. I think that it needed to just be less intensive to get through in terms of like the amount of collectibles that you are finding in order to just progress into further parts of the game. Because getting 32 and then another 32, because I included the anti-cubes in my count. I think I got like 5 or maybe 6 of those. And those were my favorite parts of the entire game, where it was puzzles that were just puzzles that existed in a single room that you had to work out and do. I thought those were actually enjoyable, whereas the like endlessly searching the worlds for the regular cube bits was tedious and uncool. So that's disappointing to know. I actually, knowing that there's double of the game, I like the game double less than I did before.
Yeah, I think it can really be boiled down to navigation. For me, at least for me. Like, I feel like if the game was easier to get around, that wouldn't be so difficult.
Because you mentioned that there were times that you didn't know where to go. There were times where I did know where to go, but not how to get there. Like I would be like, I have to go back to a node.
Oh, right.
And I couldn't find like the right door that was going to take me to it. Like if you would hate this, I'm sure. I wish that you could just click on a node on the map and warp to it.
Yeah.
Like that would be so nice.
You are right. I do hate the idea of that. My brain wants to hate that idea, but I think in this game, getting to place takes long enough that I think it would be warranted. Like maybe make it a thing you have to unlock, like you have to get to the end of a area before you can, or in like flip a switch or something, then you can warp to it or something.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I think that would be nice because you are having to do a lot of running around. Or you could very easily have to do that, and it does take a long time.
Yeah. And the mini gates are like a slap in the face. Because there are like 4 major warp gates in the first area. you can take them between each other, but then the mini gates just take you back to those warp gates. But because of the nature of the game, if you have to go somewhere to get a cube that you missed, which is all the time, that's all you're doing in the game, you have to work your way all the way through the levels again. Like, you cannot warp to the end of the level. There are a few, they have a name, but I only learned about it once last night, effectively, which are like, they're doors that are like embedded in the wall, and then you can go into those and they act as a shortcut. I know there's a notable one like right outside the sewer area. And I think I found at least like 2, maybe 3 of them that like warp you between areas, but they aren't really marked. So you just have to remember where they are. And that is like a style of engagement of game that I'm sure there are people out there that really like. But it's not us. And like you mentioned on every episode of the podcast, it's not really great for our format.
Right. And Nick, I really want to like stuff like this and do sometimes, but yeah, like I think it's just that I didn't have the amount of time I would have needed to commit to it to get into that stuff. And I think that kind of stuff, like, yeah, like I said, it's just bad for our format. Like, I think like when you're like playing a bunch of games, your desire to deep dive into something like this like goes down significantly.
I do think like the OG bad for our format game is the Outer Wilds.
Oh, Outer Wilds.
Well, actually, Oberdin is probably the answer, but I'm going to talk about the Outer Wilds anyway.
Sure.
Because it successfully pulls off that trick, even though we both pushed back a little bit on it and said, like, I wish that I had more time to, like, actually internalize this. I think that it does a better job, obviously, with 10 extra years on Fez of, like, its of development sort of wisdom. But there's something about that where, like, there's an intrigue in that game that drives, and the intrigue in Fez feels very, like, I do not mean this in that derogatory of a sense, but it feels kind of like Newgroundsy, which like a lot of indie games just did kind of have that feeling back in the day. Where I felt like the things that were supposed to be pulling me forward, I felt were kind of not that interesting to me. Well, the owls are not what they seem.
Right. I think it's very like old school. Like I know Phil Fish has been very like upfront about the fact that like it's very heavily inspired by The Legend of Zelda, like the original one, which is a game full of secrets that, you know, you need to just like keep throwing yourself at the game to find. You know, it doesn't hold your hand at all. So it feels very much like a throwback to an older game. And I think it also kind of pioneers the kind of more, like, I think you can feel the DNA. Like, I brought up Tunic. Like, I think I brought up Fez on the Tunic episode, even though I hadn't played it yet, because it had like this one secret area that was like a little diorama thing, and I was like, that kind of reminded me of Fez. It's even a better comparison than I thought, because like I think this, unless I'm, you know, just unaware of another game that did it first, but it's like it has like a puzzle. Like the whole game itself is kind of a puzzle. Like it's got like a secret ending, like there's all this secret stuff in the environment to notice. Like it has that extra meta layer. So like it feels very influential for like when it came out, like on indie games, because I feel like a lot of them focus on secrets and cryptic meta stuff like this. So I do want to give it credit for that.
Yeah. And it's kind of a natural fit, because like when you are working on a limited budget or with a limited team, which is the case in both scenarios with Fez, it's a lot easier to expand your game, to make it a more substantial piece of media by adding things that don't necessarily require new assets or levels or things like that. So adding like little bits of artwork that are, but the mental tax, I assume, is enormous, but the actual like game implementation is less expensive, and I think that's why a lot of indie games do take that tact, and I do think that Fez did a lot to popularize it. So I do agree with you. There is, I mean, this is as much as we opened this with me being like, this game, I fucking didn't want to do it, and it was asking too much of me. It is like a cool game, and you can trace its influence. I just think it might have kind of a branding problem more than anything else. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I do want to like that stuff. It just,
yeah, it's just not always gonna hit, you know.
Yeah, if you imagine like a cartoon pirate movie or something, and they bear with me.
Okay, like the cartoon pirate movie from Heavy Rain.
Yeah, okay. And like the pirates find a cave full of treasure, right? If you are a platformer game, you see the pirates jump in and they're like, yar, and they grab the gold by bags, and then they run away, and like gold coins are flying out behind them as they run off. Fez is like if the people who found the cave full of treasure were all accountants, and so they had to pick up every piece of gold and tabulate it before they moved on to the next thing. And they left no stone unturned. And by the end of it, they had not only cleared the cave of gold, but also turned it into a studio apartment that they could rent to somebody. Like, that's the experience of playing Fez. It's being incredibly thorough to the detriment of the amount of fun that I'm having.
Yeah. No, and as silly as that example was, like, it did make me think, like, this game also has like a very like Mario 64 style like collectibles, like you get the cubes, like you would get a star or whatever, and maybe that feels kind of dated or something with this style of like cryptic explorer-y game, because like so you brought up like Outer Wilds. Like Outer Wilds is just about exploring, right? I imagine that Outer Wilds would feel a lot clunkier if you had to like go to the planet and find like 32 artifacts on each planet or something like that. So yeah, maybe some kind of like more loose exploration-y kind of core to the game could have made that stuff shine more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and once again, it's not an amazing comparison, so like don't think that I'm saying that like, oh, this and Outer Wilds are directly comparable, and obviously Outer Wilds is better, but like the thing that makes Outer Wilds intrigue work is that you can yourself piece things together, and if you do that, then you get to leave. You don't have to spend, it doesn't then strap you to the, like you said, like have you pick up 32 alien dialogue coins before you can leave the planet and do something else. Like once you have the knowledge, that's all that the game requires from you, and you can just leave and do something else at that point. And Fez is just like, it really does just trap you in areas and be like, you have to finish this, otherwise you aren't going to be able to continue with the game.
Right. I guess to switch gears to something you brought up earlier, that relates to one of my notes is you mentioned that like the game, like to the player, the level design feels simple, but then if you actually think about how it would be designed and programmed, it's very complex. And that made me think of, weirdly, Mario Galaxy.
Okay.
Because I remember when that game was coming out, it got all kinds of coverage. That was like in the heyday of like G4 and stuff. Like there were all kind of previews and things about it. And people just went on and on about the gravity in like planetoid system in Mario Galaxy. It made it seem like this big gameplay innovation, like this huge deal. And then I remember like finally getting my hands on it and playing it. And I think it's a testament to the game's design. It felt really intuitive and smooth and not complex to the player. And I'm like, what is everybody like making a big deal about? Like, this doesn't seem that crazy. Like, it's the kind of thing I think for the average player, it's hard to appreciate just how like clever and complex it is. And I just think that's interesting. I think Fez is much the same way. Like, cause like I remember, like I've known of this game forever, and I always imagined like the like perspective cube switching stuff would make for like way more complex puzzles and stuff. But then when you sit down and play it, it all feels very smooth and intuitive. So I think it's interesting when a game kind of falls in that zone. I don't really know what that says about the game, but it's just like an interesting phenomenon that I've recognized.
No, I think that's good, and I honestly think it's one of the game's main positives. I think there are a lot of things actually. I started with the I hate this game bit, but now that we're into it, I can talk about how I think the game's actually quite.
Now that I've harshened the blow,
yeah. Now we can talk about why the game's actually very good. I think that the level design in this game is really impressive in that way, and it falls into a sort of camp with other games that have novel mechanic sets. For some reason, the one that came to mind when I thought of this sentence was Superliminal, which is a little bit more recent than this, but has a similar, not similar in any way, a reasonably similar mechanic of like perspective switching, where depending on how you look at an object when you're interacting with it is like it changes what the object actually is in the world, like whether it's big, small, or where it is.
I have seen, I think I watched you play a little bit of this game.
Probably. Where it has a similar thing where it's like it looks so daunting and intimidating, but then playing it actually feels, it is used in very clever ways, and it is a lot more intuitive than it appears on the outset. And I think Fez is like that as well. And honestly, yeah, like Super Mario Galaxy, where like you go, wow, like how am I ever gonna like understand platforming arcs in the way that I have since playing Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo? And you go, oh, you just jump, and it like works in the way that you would hope that it would, and it's not as hard to get into because the designers are smart and know how to do stuff like that. I think that is a good thing. I enjoyed my first time through most of the zones that I played, like finding different ways. I loved one of the zones has like a bomb mechanic where you have to like move the perspective to follow the exploding path in order to make it blow up the whole line. I liked the invisible platforms in the rain was cool. There are lots of like little, it's almost, and not to mention any game, the movie Brethren, Braid, but it is almost like how Braid has like a new gimmick in each stage that makes it not quite the same puzzle platforming. Fez does that with its, but it works them in a way that I think feels a lot more natural and feels a lot less like they are level specific gimmicks, even though that's kind of secretly what they are.
Yeah, they're more organic. They feel like more like part of the world. And yeah, even less like power-ups than they do in Braid.
Yes. Yeah, Braid. They feel like in Braid, they feel like power-ups in like a roguelike, where it's like it's a power-up that has one drawback that you now have to work around.
Yeah.
But that's what made Braid cool in a sense. So I'm not mad about it. But yeah. I did think that I think the level design in this game is very cool, and it shows how creative they actually were in making the game. Because a lot of the levels are, I mentioned like the repeating sort of like structures, but none of them feel the same in terms of the actual act of climbing. I do also want to talk about just another thing that makes, I think, the levels stand out. This game is a very, and I talked about this on literally our last episode, we talked about Super Mario World, but like it has that very kiddie primary color style, very bright and cheerful art design that I thought was very effective. It drew me in. It made me like enjoy. It was very poppy and enjoyable in that way. And it made me hate the sewers as much as I presume you're supposed to hate the sewers, because they were monochrome and hard to look at.
Right. Yeah, no, the game looks really nice. Like I know Phil Fish came from an art background and was less of a programmer. So that makes a lot of sense. And also I think if I remembering from Indie Game the movie, because I haven't seen it in like a decade,
Say,
I think he like remade all of the art assets like 3 or 4 times. Um and yeah, and I think he also said something about like when he first imagined the visual style for the game, he pictured just like blue sky, green grass, which means can mean almost nothing, depending on how you take that. But like the way you just described it, I think that's like what he means. It's like that, yeah, like Super Nintendo, like very primary, just bold blocks of color, and it's really well executed, like subtle gradients and stuff. Like it just looks really nice.
yeah, it calls to mind the exact opposite feeling of what the gameplay does in a way, because it isn't. It makes you think of that Super Mario World style of sort of running and jumping through areas and just getting through them. But then the gameplay actually is a lot more methodical than that, and I think that also kind of goes away into sort of where my expectations were coming in, and I think that that's maybe detrimental to the experience of playing the game, but it is a positive in terms of like how the art direction was very enthralling. It was a thing that made me want to play the game because I think it looks very good.
Yeah, it is one of those things that makes you want to spend the more time in it and to maybe decipher some of the cryptic stuff. Like I can almost imagine like a Captain Toad style kind of game, like with this art style. Like it's cool. Like I always liked going into like the little interior rooms and stuff and like flipping those around. It's like a very simple thing, but like for some reason I liked the flipping on an interior space to reveal a wall you couldn't see. There's just like a simple kind of pleasure to that when you find a secret that way.
I talked about there being too many places to go into. The interior spaces also do a good job of being like easily completable, which is really important when you're going for essentially 99% completion in like every zone that you're in. So if you find a door and it leads into a small space, not only is it like a nice sort of diorama-esque kind of looking area, but you also know that like most likely there's like one thing to do in here, and then that'll get a little gold square on the map, and then you can head out and you don't have to come back, which is a nice pleasing thing. So I only have positive emotions with the smaller rooms. On the level design, just like a thing I wanted to bring up because I do want to talk about it, but I don't have any idea where else I'm going to talk about it.
Sure,
So forgive me if this is a little bit out of or not in context.
You can go for it.
There's another thing that can happen occasionally when you enter an area, and that is that these black holes will start forming, which change your route through the zone. And I do like that conceptually. I think the one that stands out to me is that there's like a one that pops up around a ladder, and the ladder is, as they always are, in like 3 segments. And so you can turn the camera to move where the black holes are, and you climb up a little bit till you're on the second segment, then flip it, and then the black hole is away from the ladder and you can climb up behind it. It's a really memorable mechanic and a thing that I actually did really like when that popped up.
Yep, that's the exact example I thought of too. Probably like the first like notable little puzzle with it.
I will say there were some that I just like couldn't figure out. There were some that I was like, this completely has stopped me from moving, so I had to just like leave and come back.
Right.
So it's not all. I mean, I guess that's kind of still a win in the sense that it was like it was enough of a change up that it altered like my path, like what I was doing. But I think because the paths that you're on in this game are so long, it ended up being kind of a detriment for that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like, and other games have done this too, but this is just the first thing that came to my head. It's like in Hollow Knight, when she gets like so far through that, the first area has like different enemies in it. So yeah, it's like a cool, I think, idea to just switch up an area you've been through a couple of times with new challenges in like a kind of simple way like that.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the soundtrack?
Oh, we could talk about the soundtrack.
Yeah, I just notably the soundtrack was done by Disaster Piece,
Right.
who did the Hyperlight Drifter soundtrack. And I just remember, like, at the time, and I don't really remember the Hyperlight Drifter soundtrack super well. But I remember feeling like it didn't quite fit that game. Like, I think we kind of had a little conversation about that, like, not loving the music. Even though it was good. Like, I don't know, there was like some kind of a weird vibe to it in my memory. And I wonder if I would still think that or not. Because, like, I really liked the music in this game. Like, it felt like it fit the vibe super well. So I felt like kind of the opposite about Fez.
I drifted in and out with it. I do think it is good. I think that like the individual tracks, I think it does the thing that like I am always kind of on the fence about, where I think that I like the individual tracks as music in a way that like divorced from the game. I think that I like the individual tracks. I'm not like 100% sure on this. I haven't been like just listening to Disaster Piece or anything for the last week. But I get that impression where I think that's good in the sense that I like those songs and I think that it works well. But I know that when I was in the game, and maybe this was the intent, I found that it was sort of like washed over me after a certain amount of time, which I guess is good because it never got annoying, but it would only become notable again after like a big change up. Like I remember dropping into the sewers and having that new song play and be like, oh, okay, hold on.
Right.
I'm grooving with this one.
Yeah, I think that's the intended effect. Like, I think it is supposed to very much drift to the background. And then, yeah, like you'll go through a door and enter like a new area. And like, oh, now you're standing next to a lighthouse or whatever. And like, you know, you stand there for a second and then you notice the music. And I think it is supposed to like wave over you periodically.
That is, and that's how it worked in Hyperlight, I know, is that, and I think the complaint with Hyperlight Drifter was that it felt too ambient and background for that game, and like it fit well in certain areas that were more desolate, and then there would be like, you would be fighting like 17 pig men with shotguns, and it would just be like, it's like, you would hear 8 notes over the course of a minute.
Yeah, it's
You're like, what happened?
Yeah. I think it was just like more of a personal preference thing with Hyperlight Drifter. Like, I feel like the game had such a cool aesthetic, and I feel like a really great like soundtrack pairing could have like elevated it even further. And I felt like the soundtrack it had didn't quite. I mean, it was like solid, but I don't feel like it quite like boosted the game in the way it could have.
This is the thing. I feel like there are more. This is probably not because I didn't really get the whole soundtrack in this one. I feel like at some point we should break down more of like what we do and do not like about game soundtracks, because I feel like it comes up all the time, and we have limited vocabulary to describe it. We need to take it in a more emotional direction on like a different game. Something to chew on. I've spent a little bit of time. Not a lot. I don't have a ton of notes on this, as you might guess, as I did not finish it.
I'm about out of notes already too.
Yeah. So I want to spend a little bit of time sort of drilling down. I think there's how did you feel, I guess, about like the actual platforming? If you were in a room and you saw like a line in terms of like where the level was guiding you to go, did you often go yippee
wahoo
wahoo, or did you say mamma mia?
I don't know. I think that's an interesting question. I would say neither, probably. Like, because the game very much is a platformer. I'm not going to claim that it isn't, but like it felt more puzzle game to my brain.
Yes.
Like I was thinking of it less about like, oh, I have to jump platform to platform, and more like I have to find the cubes. So like I felt like the platforming in turn was like serviceable. And it didn't really feel like the focus to me. It was occasionally like there were some jumps. Like I feel like I like the weightiness of Gomez. Um yeah, like I feel like he's like programmed just right for the kind of platforming you have to do. Like it's not like fast or precision-y. So he feels like a little bit more weighty and feels more dangerous to fall and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it was serviceable.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because like the game doesn't have really a failure state. If you miss a jump, you just kind of go back to the last platform you were standing on. And that's a good decision. I don't think that that adding a checkpoint system to this makes the game better. So I agree with that decision. But it made it feel to me like maybe if it did have more consequences, that they would have been a little bit more precise with the way that the platforming works. It's a thing that you get used to, and I don't think that it's like bad inherently, but I do feel like on occasion I would get like a baby jump where I would mean to go further than I did, and I just wouldn't make it and die, quote unquote, and teleport back. And then I would make the jump again and I would clear it easily. And I wouldn't know what I did differently between the two attempts.
Interesting. I feel like I was kind of the opposite, where there would often be like jumps I thought I couldn't get a sense for how far I could jump in the opposite direction. Like there would often be gaps where I'm like, there's no way I can make that jump. And then I try it and make it easily every time. Like I always felt like the jump was shorter than it was. So I don't think I ever really had a problem of falling short of jumps.
Yeah, I was just like, well, because you can do a couple of different like kinds of jumps, like low jumps versus long jumps, depending on how long you hold the jump button. It's a classic platformer mechanic. And I always felt like the longer jump, and I think there is like a momentum system as well. Like you can get a running jump and then you'll go further. And I'm guessing that that's what the problem was, is that I was doing something to cancel my momentum that I wasn't entirely cognizant of as I was doing it, and I found myself falling short. But then also when there were jumps that were very short jumps that you just had to jump down to like a ledge, I found that it was really difficult to navigate Gomez in a way where he would actually land there and not way overshoot it.
Yeah, that would definitely happen sometimes.
Yeah, so I took a lot of there are a few areas, especially like the invisible platforms, which I did call out as liking. So this was obviously not that big of a detriment to me, but where my tact for those, because I was guessing to some degree as to where they were, was I would sort of jump at them to try and grab them and climb up the ledge as a way of sort of compensating for how heavy and like how much momentum is preserved when you jump in this game. It just feels a little bit different than like other indie platformers, which tend toward the more precision style that this is just not attempting really. But yeah, you mentioned that it seemed like it's way more of a puzzle game than it is a platformer. It is that. And it is weird in that sense because the platforming is ever present. You always have to be doing platforming jumps, but you're doing them in service of exploration and puzzle solving, which I think also added to sort of what felt like the long length of getting from place to place in the navigation.
Right. Yeah, because like you're going there to do puzzles and you're not focused on the platforming at hand. You're just trying to get through it. But yeah, I think we had some kind of a similar conversation when we talked about Braid, funnily enough.
Oh yeah.
Like how like you are getting around the game by platforming, but it feels like it's more about its puzzles, like it's interesting how different puzzle platformers like balance that.
Yeah, it is a balance, and Braid balances it like I think further along the puzzle solving route than even Fez does, but they do both occupy a similar area. There's one thing that I wanted to mention, and I'm going to be really angry at myself if I forget to do it, but I didn't write it down. Oh, it was also on the platforming feeling, and it was... Yeah, I went through a roller coaster of emotions on this one stupid, nitpicky mechanical detail.
Okay.
And I just kind of wanted to walk you through my experience. And that is, I didn't feel like this should have been a game where if you fell too far down, you died. And I was frustrated by it because you would go through the process of climbing somewhere and getting to the end, and then backtracking to get back to a door to go to a different location. And I was like, just let me jump down. Don't make me have to kind of like platform in reverse or whatever. But then later in the game, I made the realization that it's actually a mercy that they kill
so if you get up to the
fall.
top and fall, you don't have to,
Yeah, so it doesn't turn into getting over it with Benefati. So that was, I did have an arc though, where I was like, I hate this. And I was like, thank God that this is a system in the game. I would be so mad if it wasn't. But yeah, that was the thing. That was the last note that I had that I forgot about because I didn't write it down. Just as like filler, I guess. Welcome to the filler part of the podcast. Feel free to skip.
The filler fish.
Yeah. The filler fish content. We were talking about sort of the and I don't actually know if you looked this up, but like the crypticness of the ARG parts of the game that were in the game. So it's kind of like a fiction. It's a fictional ARG, a FARG. That once you get through the 32 cube door, and I'm sure there are probably things that like will call your attention to it beforehand. You meet dudes who are speaking in a different language, which also made me think of Tunic.
Yep.
But I think that's the part where the game is trying to tell you essentially that there is more to it. I did find the writing cube, which is supposedly like part of the cipher for the language. But the idea of me writing down the symbols and doing anything with them was so far beyond what I was like willing to do at that point.
Right. Yeah, and there's multiple different like layers to it too, because like there's also these patterns on different things in the environment, this is also very Tunic, that are like just these different little codes of like how to like you have to like certain things like mean to jump and then like rotate one way, rotate another way, like you're putting in a combination to make something appear. Like that kind of shit's all over the game once you notice it. And there's the secret language and apparently there's still stuff. There's like one crazy part where you have to know binary code to like to do something. So it's very much like that. Also ahead of its time. You already said ARG. Like it's something that like it was put in the game with the intent that like people would work together on the internet to decode it to like figure it all out. And apparently there's still stuff that hasn't been figured out.
That's wild. Considering in the age of data mining and everything, it seems crazy that would still be a mystery. But yeah, it came long before Kojima's weird obsession with it and Strand type games of developing things with the intention of having like the internet hive mind work it out. So it is true. It is a little bit visionary in that sense. But yeah, like I said, I didn't super engage with it. It's knowing that that's a thing, that it gets more complicated than I thought it did. While it doesn't make me like it that much more, that's just me. Like, that's just on a personal level. I don't think that's like bad game design. That's like I don't like excessively complicated like decryption algorithms to just exist in video games when they have ulterior motives. I want to play the game where you jump around and solve puzzles, not the game where I have to like break out a dictionary of Morse code to Arabic language or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on the kind of game. Because like, yeah, like, I kind of like brushed up against like just finding out that the stuff existed in the game, and I was like, I'm just not here for it this time. But whereas like I was really into Tunic, so like I think it's just like a case by case basis, like whether or not you're going to want to engage that much with it.
I agree, and
like,
I think
I feel like there was like a time in my life where I could have played this and gotten super into that stuff, for sure. But now is not that time.
It's crazy because, like, to me, that makes me think of like 13-year-olds, but I'm realizing that that has everything to do with culture and the way that internet culture has shaped the way that people engage with things. Because when I was 13, I would not at all be into this kind of thing. But I'm imagining that specifically because, I mean, I'll just like Game Theory, the YouTube channel, right? Got a bunch of kids into trying to puzzle out ARGs and lore in all of the games that they play. And I think that that's why I have that thought. And that might not even be accurate. It's just sort of the association that I have in my head. So it's interesting to think about, because at the time that this game came out, it was before any of that really took off. It was not commonplace for people to want to do that kind
Game
of
Theory
stuff.
probably just started existing in 2012.
It's probably right around the time that the first Five Nights game came out, actually.
Yeah, around then.
I could look that up, but I'm not going to.
I think it was like a couple years later.
Probably.
But anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like my limit for that stuff is like Inscription, where it doesn't impact the gameplay at all, and you just have to spend some time after playing it thinking about what happened.
Yeah. And I mean, we already covered this thoroughly on the abduction episode. But like I think I have like a kind of romanticized idea of like probably like Phil Fish does of like older games filled with secrets and stuff. Just like the idea of that stuff is like really cool to me. But yeah, like it has to be in the right game. Like I already have to be on board personally.
Yeah.
Because like
I
think we've even talked about it with it may be on cast, maybe off cast, I don't know, but just ARGs in general. Like I love finding like a YouTube channel where somebody breaks down like a super popular famous ARG that happened. I'll eat that shit up. But like I feel like I don't really have the skills to participate in an ARG. Like I don't think I'd ever actually get sucked into one in real life, even though the idea sounds appealing to me.
Yeah. I mean that's the true fantasy of an ARG. And I'm sorry if I'm like Santa Clausing anybody in the audience who thinks the ARGs are this pure natural thing, but it's like the actual solution of an ARG rarely comes down to like teamwork. It's just exposing it to a large enough audience that experts in very specific fields see it and are able to do the puzzles. So it's less like you want to imagine that it's like this big collaborative effort. And to some degree it is. But realistically, it's probably like 6 people with a very outsized influence on the result compared to like the thousands of people who are participating. And I think that's kind of what has always turned me off about ARGs as like a concept, is that it's like, how do you like clue this in a way that's actually fun for people? And it's more just about the presentation and the mystery.
Yeah, it's about the journey.
And at that point, just like write a horror story.
Yeah, just write a book. Or make a game.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not like they're not valuable pieces of art. But I think that they do a lot of behind the scenes to make sure that the like magic of them stays intact. That Fez really can't capture, I think, 13 years after its release, you know? Or 14 years, so. Woo! I mean, do we have Fez thoughts?
My Fez thoughts. So yeah, finally played Fez. I know this one's been on the list since like 2016. And yeah, it's an interesting one to come back to. Because yeah, like I just said, I feel like there was a time where I could have gotten really into this, probably closer to its release. But yeah, like playing it now, I feel like it was just a solid puzzle platformer. And then yeah, I kind of brushed elbows with the cryptic stuff and just kind of it just didn't have it in me to dive into it. So yeah, it's kind of like only playing half the game really. And because I didn't interact with the more interesting things in the game, I ended up kind of with not a ton to say about this. But I do think that the game looks really nice. I think that I like the soundtrack. I think that, yeah, like the level design is actually super clever and impressive, but sometimes in a way that's kind of hard to appreciate. But the game is surprisingly, I think, influential and was surprisingly ahead of its time. I do think it is a bit of a shame that the creator ended up being a shiftier guy, allegedly, and, you know, letting the internet kind of discourse kind of rot his brain, and has kind of decided to just never make video games ever again. Because I do think this game is really interesting and was kind of trailblazing in a few ways. So I do want to give it credit for that. But yeah, didn't quite click with me, but you know, what are you going to do? So yeah, I enjoyed my time with it well enough.
Yeah. I think I largely agree with that. I think that my concern it's not the right way to put it. I think that the sort of the worst design thing for me to prevent me from enjoying this game was just the level of thoroughness that was required on the part of the player to make it to the new areas. Because otherwise I do actually think that this game has a lot going for it. I think that the platforming mechanics feel serviceable enough to get you into it, to see the unique level design, to appreciate the art direction, which I think is very strong, to want to actually get in and explore the game to an extent. But it just asks you to do things that are like, to do things and to redo things so often, or to be so thorough as you're going through, that I feel like it kind of sucks the momentum out of the game and brings it to a halt. But literally, except for that, which is a core, aspect of the game's design. So it's hard to overlook it. But I do think like the majority of the other aspects of this game are done really well. And yeah, you've dedicated a little bit of time to talking about the more cryptic and in-depth puzzle solving parts of the game that are more secretive than the other aspects. And you said it's like playing half the game. Then it's kind of like I played a quarter of the game because I only played a half of the actual game also. So it is there's a lot to this game. There's a lot more than I was willing to get into, and to some degree that's my fault, and to some degree that's just a difference in the experience of living life between 2012 and 2026. But I think that what the game sets out to do, it does a surprisingly good job of succeeding at. So I can't say that it's a bad game. It's just not one that's for me, I would say.
And I also meant to mention the navigation being its biggest weakness in my final thoughts. So
very true. Yeah. It's such wanting a fast travel system is such a 2026 complaint for a 2012 game.
Well, as somebody who isn't as quick to make that claim, I think it's absolutely warranted in this.
Thank you for listening to Describing the Skybox this week.
What will the die dictate we're playing next time?
The die have become more forceful over time. They're now dictating what we're playing.
Mm-hmm. 2.
Next time, we're going to be talking about dreams.
Oh, okay.
This is going to be a fascinating one for us to kind of figure out how to structure the podcast. So we'll probably talk a little bit about that before recording next time. But if you're unfamiliar, Dreams is originally PS4. I think now you can play it on the PS5. I don't know if it has enhanced features or whatever. Game development software / game browser. And it is, we've spent some time with it.
Well, yeah, it was like a COVID game for us.
Yeah.
We played it the most then.
So this will be an interesting one to go back to.
Yeah, I wonder how many quests for cheeses there are now.
We will have to see if we can find some of our old favorite games, but I don't know. I'm in a bit of awe about this one. We'll see how it
I mean, that's
shakes
why
out.
it's on this list. I think it'll be fun to talk about. It'll be something different.
Agreed. But until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at describingtheskybox.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our Blue Sky account, our YouTube channel, the Discord where people suggest games for us to play and talk about the games that we have talked about, and Rap Snacks. We've also talked about that.
Yeah, and if Colin's listening, you never gave us your thoughts on Road Warden. I've been waiting for like 2 months.
Oh yeah, we're dying.
Road Warden.
Hey, you can listen to all of our old episodes, including ones that we did on Braid, on Not Super Meat Boy yet. We'll complete the trilogy at some
Puzzle
point.
Platform. I feel like we've done those.
Oh, we definitely have. Though we did also talk about Oberdin and Outer Wilds.
Right, yeah.
So just to get those in there.
Mm-hmm. Abduction. I also brought that up.
A Hat in Time is a collectathon platformer. It's not really a puzzle platformer.
No. Anyway, we brought up enough things.
Agreed. Go listen to all those episodes. It's very important that you do it for
Rotate
context.
the central pillar to find that on one side it has a like button, on the next side it has a comment section, and then on the next side it has a subscribe button.
But when you go into the comment section, then the like button becomes really far away, but the subscribe button becomes really close.
So you have to sequence them in the correct order to solve the puzzle and get your cube. And the order is like, comment, and subscribe.
Oh, it's not even, he didn't even put his real name on there. That coward, Phil Fish.